We have a packed show for you tonight. We've got Michael C joining us live from the new Cambridge South station in a minute to give us the lowdown on what is being called GBR's first new railway station. We're reviewing Starmer's rather brief tenure as PM to see what the Labour government have delivered in terms of rail promises since 2024. And of course, we'll be going through the news and other bits from the last 2 months, of which there is a lot. See you shortly. As ever, if you want to arm yourself with the tools to make transport better, then joining the Patreon for £5 a month is a great place to start, giving you the free audiobook of How the Rails Will Fix the Future, as well as access to the weekly bonus episode with the full back catalogue, adding a big chunk to the Rail Natter canon. Go to patreon.com/Gareth Dennis. Everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. And as the Intercity 225 fades away, Cambridge South Station opened to passenger services on Sunday the 28th of June. To get the lowdown, we join our roaming correspondent Michael C. Michael.
Thank you, Gareth. So you join me not live at Cambridge South. We can pretend it's live, it's fine. At Cambridge South, the newest station in Britain. It's an absolutely huge station. We've got 4 platforms here, 2 entrances, 1,000 cycle storage spaces. It's a really big deal. And the government rightly has put a lot of money into this because there's a really exciting future for the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, which they're hinging a lot of their hopes on for future growth. So the station in total has cost more than £250 million, so it's a very substantial investment, and that really does show when you're walking around the station. It feels like a high-quality, well-built station. I wish we had more of this, because I go to a lot of station openings. Most of them really do not feel this good.
That's interesting. So break down for us in a bit more detail, what does the quality of this station feel like versus other new stations you've visited?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I've been to a lot of station openings, and I would say I've noticed pretty much with all station openings, it's either one extreme or the other. There's 2 types of station openings you generally get. You either get stations like this, which are big, multi-million, like hundreds of millions of pounds of like really big, impressive, grand stations. So there's this one. Bewley Park is another one that opened recently. A bit longer ago, we had Brent Cross West, which was something like £400 million. So these are really big, expensive stations that are lovely, but they're also like, we can't have them everywhere just because of how expensive they are. So the other type of station we get is just the bare minimum. It's so depressing. It's usually just, and this is what Jen on the Move complains about all the time, it's just like a platform, a bus stop shelter, a ticket machine, and that's it. And I really think there's a middle ground that we're sort of missing. We don't need all stations to be as big and grand as Cambridge South, but at the same time, there are so many stations that are just pitiful, and I think we need to find that middle ground station. So the Rail Natter you did a while ago, for example, on Network Rail's sort of kit of parts template for a station, that looks really promising, but we're yet to see that being rolled out anywhere. I want to say that they're planning on using that sort of template for East West Rail, but that's many years away. So watch this space, but I think it is a real shame that we only really get the extremes of like massive stations like this, or it's just like basically a halt.
Ah yes, the dramatic contrast between stations that are an inconvenience to build versus the ones that government perceives as worthy of attention. Is the lack of canopy for the full platforms noticeable?
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm standing on a bit of the station that doesn't have the canopy, and actually when you look down the platform, it does look like the canopy is only covering quite a small proportion of it. But the thing is that this station is so long, it's long enough to accommodate 12-car trains, that even if the proportion of the platform covered is relatively little, that's still a lot of space. So when you're under the canopy, I'd say you really don't notice it. Like there's plenty of stations in the country where the canopy doesn't cover that much of it. Sometimes only like 1 carriage lengths, and that definitely covers more than that. So I'd say it's not really a problem at all.
Do you think the station will retain its fresh look, or will it fade rapidly?
I'd say I don't think it'll fade very quickly. It feels well built. There is a danger because they've used glulam wood, which I'm always somewhat suspicious about because wood rots and stuff, but I don't think glulam has that problem in quite the same way. There is the green roof, which there's a danger that if that isn't maintained properly, that could start looking a bit old and manky. But as it stands at the moment, like I say, this feels like a well-built station, like it's built to last.
Thank you. Rail is only one part of the mobility story. How is the station integrated into the wider urban and regional transport network?
Yeah, so there are plenty of links to the wider area. I mentioned earlier that there's 1,000 cycle storage spaces here, which is not insignificant by any means. Beyond that, the guided busway passes right by, and there is a stop nearby. Sadly, it's not like right outside the station, but it's only like a sort of 2-minute walk apart, so it's still a pretty easy interchange. There is no car park here, though, I will say, which when I made my news video about that, sort of a lot of people were kicking off in the comments being like, whoa, I don't know how I feel about that. The comments that stood out to me most, though, were saying, what does that mean for disabled access? Because, you know, even if sort of regular people are still unable to drive here, you know, a lot of disabled people do have to drive. But actually, there are disabled parking spaces here. So they have thought of that, which is really good to see.
Michael C., thank you very much indeed, and we look forward to you joining us in the studio shortly. Starmer is gone. Farewell. Goodbye. Don't let the door bang you on the way out. And I thought, you know, given that we are seeing a mid-term change in Prime Minister, as is becoming the norm in the UK, it's a good chance for us to look back on what Labour have achieved in government in relation to railways based on their previous promises. Now, back in episode 213, we looked in detail at the promises made by the Labour government in advance of the 2024 general election. Those promises were made in the form of a document called Getting Britain Moving, Labour's plan to fix Britain's railways. And within that, Labour identified 6 key objectives for the railway. And I thought that it'd be a good chance to go through each of these 6 objectives and judge them against what has actually been measured and outputted. So the first of these is reliability. What was promised and should have been delivered by 2 years in power, absolutely, was a more reliable railway through bringing operators under public ownership, ending fragmentation and short-term decision-making, putting passengers at the centre of railway management, improving operational performance across the network. The reality is that Great British Railways still does not exist. PPM performance is slightly lower than when Labour entered office. There have been several recent periods which have seen particularly poor performance. Credit to SW Watch on Twitter for that. Generally, we've seen Treasury-driven service reductions continuing to undermine reliability overall. Next up, affordability. Labour promised a railway that was more affordable and easier to use, which implied protecting passengers from fare increases, reforming Britain's notoriously complex fare system, making tickets purchasing simpler. To quote, "We will also ensure that ticketing innovations like auto-compensation, pay-as-you-go and digital season ticketing are rolled out across the network." The reality, though, is a fare freeze has been delivered, but there have been no wider ticketing reforms, no GBR ticketing platform exists today, and there is no evidence of them working on auto-compensation or pay-as-you-go. In fact, the evidence is that they are continuing to move the railway further from a universal pay-as-you-go system entirely. What about efficiency? Labour promised that, they argued that fragmentation created inefficiency. The solution was GBR, unified leadership, better integration, simpler governance, a railway run for long-term outcomes rather than short-term Treasury targets. The reality, however, is that GBR has not been established. There are no major passenger-facing efficiency improvements emergent at this point. Treasury influence remains substantial, and their control over GBR in its final state is currently still undetermined. Labour's own criticism of the split responsibilities between government departments remains largely unresolved, so it's very difficult to see how they have got on top of this particular objective. What about quality? Well, Labour promised a better passenger experience through improved services, better performance, stronger leadership, passenger-focused management. However, the reality is that there has been no obvious transformation in passenger experience. There might be some upcoming Wi-Fi improvements delivered by SpaceX. See the news later on. Reliability problems continue to affect journeys. Overcrowding remains an issue in many areas, and the railway feels largely the same to most, if not all, passengers. What about accessibility? Something that I, as you all know, care very, very deeply about. Labour promised that they would make the railway more accessible, which should have meant improving access for disabled passengers, better station accessibility, stronger passenger support, and accessibility becoming a core part of railway reform. The reality is that we've had to fight, campaigners have had to fight tooth and claw to make accessibility a core statutory requirement of the new GBR. There's little evidence of a significant accessibility programme. Concerns around accessibility remain widespread, and there are many long-standing barriers still in place that there appears to be no interest in resolving anytime soon. Of course, infrastructure investment is a key part of that. And we've actually seen this government withdraw from its existing AFA commitments, so commitments to make stations accessible. What about safety? Well, it was promised that there would be integrated transport to lessen waiting times, that there'd be better overall governance, and there would be passenger-focused reform. The reality is that several significant concerns remain. We continue to see level crossing incidents. There are ongoing controversies around driver-only operation. There are reports of increasing cab intrusion incidents, and there are broader concerns around operational pressures and cost-cutting and the long-term systematic effects those will have on safety, whether that is, pervasive small little safety issues or some of those larger, more dramatic derailments and other incidents. So, what of Labour's performance so far in government, if we're going to summarise? I would say it's a disappointment, to say the least. If he is really going to change course, Burnham has a lot to do in the remaining electoral cycle. Now, tonight's bonus is looking in numbers at UK car dependency. This is something I've wanted to do for a while. It's a really good conversation article with some really good numbers. We're going to go through those in detail for the bonus episode. That will be live tonight, so you get to see me live after Baby is asleep, I hope. And of course, something else.
Union Pacific said we want to do this, to show the people how great the Union Pacific Norfolk Southern merger
it's like a pitch. It's a pitch to like to the Trump administration to be like, just wave this through, wave it through. No, nothing to see here.
They were going to bring it down to Washington D.C. originally, but that got canned for some reason, which I was annoyed at because I did want to see Trump on the footplate. I think that'd be really funny. That'd be a funny picture.
A big boy on the big boy.
The big boy on the big boy, yeah. You have just listened to a short clip from the latest episode of Trains Atlantic, the podcast about trains that tries to say everything you've not heard everywhere else. To get the full show sent your way every month, subscribe via trainsatlantic.uk.
And so, the news. Michael C. joins us, having returned from Cambridge South on a very fast train. Yes. Michael, hello.
Hi.
So, let's get stuck in. So, this is a bit of a weird stunt. There's a moment kind of worth sharing here, which was that in a sort of a launch of Leeds Mass Transit, I don't exactly know what they're launching, but they're doing so. Rachel Reeves and Tracy Brabin here. Reeves took a pen and crossed out proposed mass transit corridor and wrote the word tram, which is an odd stunt to do, given the fact that it's Treasury and DfT that have collectively pushed to delay the project by a decade. That's baffling. But also, of course, none of this means anything, given that Starmer is now, in his last breath as PM, more on that in a second, pitching desperately to become the kind of the chair or leader of NATO, which means he's now saying Britain has to scrap everything and triple our GDP percentage funding on defense. So I don't really know what this stunt was about, to be honest, other than just an annoying little stunt. So there we go. Annoying little stunt done by Rachel Reeves here. Meanwhile, Treasury is doing the Lord's work here by commissioning a pro-PFI paper from itself. So the quote here from basically it's saying the Treasury, which is restricted by the Chancellor's fiscal rules that prevent excessive borrowing and the increasing cost of public debt because of the war in Iran, has commissioned a research paper from the British Infrastructure Task Force, a group of major investors, on the merits of the return of PFI. The British Infrastructure Task Force. It's always a suspect thing. It's like, what do you mean Infrastructure Task Force?
I swear that I've never heard of them before. They just make up these new groups. I'm like, who is this one? It's like there's a report from this group, there's a report from that. Where are all these groups coming from?
Yeah, quite. So this paper, seen by the Telegraph, so this is a Telegraph extract, boo, recommends that the Treasury go further and use PFIs for blah, 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 everything, right? So the question is, Marl Karks, friend of the show, going, who are the British Infrastructure Task Force and why are they recommending a return to the discredited and cripplingly expensive PFI model of public infrastructure, you ask? Surprise, it's just the private sector recommending another gold-plated public money trough to feed from. Well, it's funnier than that. Because if we pull up this list of people who are the British Infrastructure Task Force, yes, you've got the Pension Insurance Corporation, Fidelity International, you've got Lloyds Banking, CDPQ, Phoenix Group, so private equity and pension funds, banking, M&G, BlackRock, IFM Investors, Santander, Aberdeen, as it was briefly called. But then most interestingly is that you have these three at the bottom of the British Infrastructure Task Force. You have the chair of the Infrastructure and Projects Authority. You have the CEO of the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, the CEO of the National Infrastructure Commission. Now, wait a minute. Wait a sec. Those are both NISTA now. They're both this guy's baby. As I see, John Armitt behind me. And bearing in mind that both the Infrastructure and Projects Authority and the National Infrastructure Commission are both bodies that span out of Treasury's Partnerships UK PFI body in the 90s. So what this is private equity, it is pension funds, private capital essentially, plus the private capital bit of Treasury going, hey, Treasury, you should do more PFI. Baffling Ouroboros or of like people who it will benefit from the government not just funding infrastructure directly.
It's also predictable, isn't it? It's just like anyone could have seen this coming.
But
like,
why do they get anyone paying attention to them is my baffling thing. Talking of people who are absolutely in the pocket and completely wired to be Treasury brained, Andy Burnham, or more specifically Andy Burnham's Class 390 was in the news because he's on his way to become. He was on his way. Starmer was giving his silly little speech saying, "I'm off, bye-bye," and no one cared. But more people cared about the train that Andy Burnham was in on its way down to Euston Station, which resulted in these bizarre scenes of like Andy Burnham arriving into London Euston Station, the press desperately running around to try and get a shot of him, except that he snuck out the side entrance that none of them know about. So yeah, the Starmer of the North heads south, which is fun on a variety of levels. Firstly, like, no one watching this should be fooled that Burnham is going to do anything different. He is Starmer with a northern accent. Like, anything he has said or done about infrastructure as the mayor of Greater Manchester is irrelevant, because as soon as you go to Westminster, he will engage the same brain that he was in when he was in Treasury before and cancelled, for example, things like Leeds trams and so on and so on. So I would not expect... He's going to fall straight back into that form, so don't expect anything special, I'm afraid, everybody. What's kind of fun, though, the IFG, the Institute for Government, created this little graphic showing what I'm going to call Britain's demise measured in prime ministers. So you can sort of see, like, the period of instability, the brief period of stability while we had... This is basically like Britain's demise post-Second World War is because we have nothing and are nothing. And so you can see like instability, a bit of stability in the post-World War kind of years when everyone's like, oh, peace, that's nice. Then some instability, a bit of stability, then some mixture, and just general instability until we got bailed out by our discovery of the oil. That gave us some stability to the end of Blair. And then it's just been a large scale and accelerating instability, which is really fun. There it is. Look, in large form, everyone can enjoy British prime ministers from 1945 to 2026. I would describe this as a downwards trajectory, and so be it.
I'm enjoying. I know this is the classic thing that everyone will say, but I'm enjoying just how small the trust thing is. Like, it almost looks like a mark on my screen that I should be trying to rub off. Like, it's that little. Yeah, like circling it. Yeah, there is something there, folks. There is something there.
It's not just a piece of punctuation. No, that is trust there, doing the opposite of what a trust does, which is being vertical rather than horizontal. Of course, the Starmer of the North heading south... Who do we spot in this photo, the fancy photo here? Someone who thinks that she has a future in this government, or at all. Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves sneaking into this picture as if she isn't like completely going down with the Starmer ship. Sorry about that. On this day, when everyone was having tremendous larks and fun in Westminster, government snuck something out rather cheeky, which was... The results of the Heathrow Green Book impact assessment. They were released exactly as Burnham defeated Starmer, and no one was paying attention. DFT cost-benefit analysis suggests that it has a net present value of minus 23 billion to minus 62 billion, yes, you read that correctly, for UK residents, rising to minus 121 billion for its global impact. the losses are led by the welfare harms of climate change and climate damage specifically. The government is going to try and distance itself from this result, of course, and they're going to instead focus on the wider economic benefits. To that end, by the way, this is very much Dr. Alex Chapman's work. He's been pursuing this relentlessly. So do give Dr. Alex Chapman a follow and keep up with the latest details on this. They've commissioned, the government has commissioned Frontier Economics, the consultants that Heathrow use, to provide a GDP sort of glow up, if you like, in Alex Chapman's words. The method is complete nonsense, but even so, it still only manages to find 0.05% of GDP down the back of the sofa. The government must end the Heathrow delusion and put this destructive scheme to bed, as Dr. Chapman says. This is absolutely grim, but credit to those in the DFT who absolutely stuck to their principles and published this, put this out into the public domain so that people can see that it is awful. And my call to action for all of you is publish this everywhere you possibly can to tell people and point out to people that the Heathrow expansion of Heathrow is nothing short of fraud. It is fraud.
Exactly. And will this change anything? Probably not, because the government's always like, oh well, the business case, look at this. Is this going to change anything?
Case. This is the business case.
So they just don't care about the business case. They just use that as a convenient excuse to cancel things they were planning on cancelling anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, who said that before? So, meanwhile, in other frauds, data centres, hooray! So there'd be 3 huge proposed UK data centres. All of them managed to understate their carbon impact by 500% because they compared 1 year of their emissions against a 5-year national budget. And they were all granted planning permission. They all got planning permission. They got through the sift. These 3 data centres will generate annual emissions roughly the same as the entire city of Bristol. Yet each one was described as having a minor adverse impact on UK emissions. This is insane. The problem is that from a planning policy perspective, that's actually a permissible stance. It's the one taken by almost every development currently in the system, all the data centres kind of doing this, because if it wasn't, we'd have to start admitting that the things we want to do don't always align with net zero. And there are no meaningful significance criteria for carbon emissions in environmental impact assessment. I won't name her, but this, very much pointed out by a friend, a good engineer within Atkins Realis, kind of making this point, sticking her head above the parapet on LinkedIn and making the point, this is insane, what are we doing? And kind of pointing the finger at the consultancy class, who are the ones who firstly made this mistake and secondly wave this junk through. Consultants getting involved in data centers shouldn't be. It's as simple as that. Do not do that. Is completely against what you claim to be doing. So this is good. So data centers. Well, I'm sure that the data center lobby isn't just doing fraud to get its stuff through. No, they don't need to, because another friend of the show, Paris Marx here, they're pointing out, in Paris's words, in fact, honestly, I welcome the data center lobby just openly saying climate goals needed to be trashed so the tech industry can build AI. Intense heat waves, record forest fires, worsening natural disasters, be damned. Yeah, in the middle of the heat wave last week, this came out. Europe must choose between AI and climate goals, data center lobby says.
Well, that's the easiest choice ever. I'm so, what?
Well,
why is this even a debate we're having? Are we kidding?
I know, it's absolutely...
Look out the window!
I know, it's ridiculous. This is, if this doesn't happen, if we don't prioritize AI over our climate ambitions, we risk surrendering our tech sovereignty to China. Tech sovereignty is not a thing. Europe has no tech sovereignty. It's either China or the US. We have no tech sovereignty whatsoever. That's the view of the president of the European Data Center Association, which lobbies the EU on behalf of data center companies. Yeah, funny that. Lex Koers said that Europe's energy system is not ready to power advanced AI data centers, and Europe may need to fall back on new carbon-emitting gas power plants to meet its tech sovereignty goals. Christ. The grid is not ready. Small modular nuclear reactors won't be on time. So now what? He said. The European Commission wants to triple the bloc's data center capacity by 2032 as part of its AI continent action plan. But Core said the rollout of renewables, grid expansion plans, and next generation nuclear are not moving fast enough to support that growth. This leaves Europe facing the sensitive question of whether it should temporarily rely on gas-fired power to support AI growth while waiting for grids, nuclear reactors, and blah, blah, blah to catch up.
Or just, I don't know, don't.
Just don't.
It's a pretty simple... Oh, my goodness.
Don't is an option. My suggestion is, let's at least open the conversation, said Chorus, whose organization represents big tech groups like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, along with local data center companies. Go away. Go away. Of course, it's not like we're approaching, it's not like we're kind of, approaching a sort of a cliff edge for all this stuff at all, is it? AI exuberance, this is the Financial Times, risks ending in lengthy investment bust, BIS warns. Weak returns could trigger sharp pullback from funding for tech companies that threatens the global economy. That's interesting. What's this about then? So, Alliance's investment chief warned this week that SpaceX's decision to launch a $25 billion bond sale so soon after its IPO was a sign that markets had entered bubble territory. Now, let's have a look at some graphs from the FT, shall we? So, here's the financing for AI companies. You see it surging and surging and surging. Whee! Look at it go. Up, 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 up. Debt, therefore, has gone whee! Up, 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 up. And, let's just have a look at some historical precedents, shall we? So, let's start with the dot-com boom there. So you can see rise in investment, a substantial rise in investment followed by a drop. Let's maybe go to railway mania, shall we? Oh, look, spectacular rise in investments followed by a tremendous drop-off and leveling. Multiples of the pre-boom trough, by the way, this graph. What about probably one of the more catastrophic ones, which is canal mania? Oh, there you go. See, climbing, reaching a peak of 4 times its pre-boom trough in terms of investment multiples, and then catastrophically dropping through the floor. Hooray for canal mania. Where's AI? Up, 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 whee! Going up,
surely it'll be different this time. Surely this is the time we found the infinite growth machine. This is not, ignore all the historical precedent. This is the time that we found the infinite growth machine.
Exactly. So the next thing is, the good thing is nothing is escalating such that a trigger might result in a bubble burst, of course. This is the FT again. We created a monster. Companies rein in AI usage as costs strain budgets. Amazon, Walmart, and Uber are among early adopters that have introduced caps or discouraged wasteful activity. Let's just have a quick read of this, shall we? Companies that race to put AI tools in the hands of their workers are starting to rein in their use as the cost of deploying the technology at scale begins to test corporate budgets. Amazon, Walmart, Cisco, Uber, and Meta are among early adopters that have introduced caps, discouraged wasteful use, or pushed employees to cheaper models in a bid to keep AI spending under control. The shift marks a new phase in corporate AI adoption as workers move beyond chatbots to AI agents, which can perform complex tasks autonomously. No, they can't, but require far more computing power. They certainly do. Companies are being forced to scrutinize whether each query and task is worth the cost. This is intensified as groups including Anthropic and OpenAI have moved some services from flat subscriptions to token-based billing. Who said this would happen? Which tracks the units of data processed by models. The change has exposed companies more directly to the cost of every prompt and automated workflow. We all ask ourselves, and specifically Ed Zitron, is this good? Is that good, folks? I'm going to go with... Who knows? We couldn't possibly say. Meanwhile, on the subject of the bubble, the US is already spending more on data centers than on public transport. 50 billion quid a year now being spent on data centers, which is more than is being spent on public transport. So that's good. That's really healthy, good, and fine. We probably shouldn't worry about that. Meanwhile, Michael. Well, a nice little picture here. You'll notice something. On one side is a car, and on the other side is what appears to be as much metal as possible can be squeezed into an area with some wheels attached to it. Car spreading, right? There's some recent research. I mean, we've been talking about this in Rail Natter all the time. Whenever I spot research on it, I put it in here because it's important that all of us keep this fresh in our mind when we're having these arguments in favour of sustainable transport with rail at its heart. Car spreading could lead to an extra 400 crash deaths a year by 2040, study finds. Cars in Europe have grown longer, taller, and wider every year since 2000. In fact, specifically, cars have grown 1.2 centimetres longer, half a centimetre taller, and half a centimetre wider every year since the year 2000, right, in Europe. This is, green groups are calling this relentless car spreading. The increase in size, which leaves people more likely to be killed in a crash, increases emissions that hurt lungs and heat the planet, has progressed at a roughly steady rate for 2.5 decades, even as family sizes have fallen. The campaign group Transport and Environment have found. It's also a problem for drivers because, cities are expected to lose potentially 15% of on-street parking by 2040 if the historical trend continues unchecked, the analysis found. London and Berlin are each predicted to lose about 100,000 parking spaces. So
not to mention the fact that they cause exponentially more damage to the roads.
Yeah.
So you know how everyone's complaining about the potholes.
Yeah,
that's
go.
not. We're not.
Here we go.
So that ain't improving anytime soon.
No, that's not getting fixed. That's getting worse, everyone. And of course, so there's been some interesting additional supplementary research to this undertaken by Professor Ian Walker, looking at the public perception of this problem, public perception of SUVs. That's such an obvious AI image, isn't it? Come on, Ian,
Yeah.
don't use that. So basically, they did some research looking at, well, if you put kind of labels onto SUV adverts, does this potentially better inform purchasers of vehicles, drivers, and do they make different decisions? The answer is no, they don't. So I'll just pick out three messages, kind of tweets in Professor Ian Walker's Blue Sky thread here. So, in other words, the classic educational approach doesn't look like it would solve this issue. Sometimes education of consumers does. In this case, it doesn't. Perhaps not surprising when so many structural factors, tax breaks, social norms, marketing, accommodating, parking spaces, etc., push people towards bigger vehicles. We argue that this fits squarely into an emerging body of research that all points the same way. Car culture and motor normativity are so entrenched, it's too late for information and incentives to make the difference. Hard measures are needed if we want to get serious about reducing car harms. Now, what are those hard measures? Banning the things. That's basically the hard measures. Ian ends by saying, we also need to have a more honest conversation about how driving, no matter how useful to the person doing it, imposes harms onto other people. Until we try to reduce those harms as much as possible, it's not clear how we're going to take the steps needed to create a safer, healthier country. The bottom line here is that SUVs kill and that the people buying them don't care. Now, I don't say that necessarily in a pejorative sense. I say that in an academic sense, in that they literally don't care. Like, it's the data has shown that those, it doesn't, educating drivers about SUVs and their risks doesn't change their buying patterns. Therefore, they do not care. It's not relevant to them. That's not a factor in their decision making. So it's good that we're pushing ourselves into a heavier and heavier car-centric future, right? Of which autonomous vehicles, of course, sit at the heart.
They're going to solve all our problems, obviously.
Waymo recalls entire US robotaxi fleet after vehicles swept away in San Antonio flood. It entered floodwaters and was washed into a creek. So nearly 4,000 robotaxis recalled. This surely won't happen again. Waymo recalls all of its US robotaxis after 13 reported instances of autonomous cars driving into freeway construction zones, like in like in the movie Speed. The incidents happened in Phoenix and San Francisco in April and May. In 6 events in Phoenix, the self-driving cars did not recognize and drove past ramp closure signs and into pre-planned work zones on the freeway, which is quite funny. In San Francisco, 7 vehicles entered freeway lanes with active construction by driving between cones designating lane closure in the adjacent lane as they inappropriately prioritized avoiding other freeway hazards, according to the filing. No crashes occurred as a result, but the company suspended freeway driving in May. Driverless cars will never exist. These are not the first full US fleet recalls, and they won't be the last. And meanwhile, of course, we are racing to roll these out in the UK.
I was going to say, we're seeing them in London, and it's just like, really? Because at least in the US, they've got like roads that are generally like wide and straight. Try navigating through like Mayfair with one of them. It's not going to happen.
No,
it's not going to happen.
No, it's just absolutely. So now we jump. Having talked about cars and the misery of the fact that we seem to be relying on those, there is some hope and good news here, which is that here's the Climate Change Committee responding to the fact that Parliament has passed the 7th carbon budget into law. So, unless this is kind of rescinded by the next government, which it might well be, at the moment this is law. So we have 2 years to hold government to account on this stuff. Government has committed, rabbit ears committed, to an 87% greenhouse gas emissions drop by 2042, so by shortly after the next decade. So that means that we have to do things that result in that drop. Let's see what Ed Miliband has to say about this. As Britain faces the second fossil fuel shock of the decade, the only way to protect family and business finances is to drive for clean, homegrown power that we control. What has been achieved so far by businesses and communities across the country is a great British success story, cutting costs by upgrading homes, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm not even going to read this sort of propaganda. Sorry, Ed, that isn't what's happening. That's precisely not what's happening. Some people want to stick their heads in the sand and let our children face the consequences of climate breakdown, but this government believes in the timeless British value of protecting our country for generations to come. Well, that's sinister. They have to put in the flag wavy stuff when lines like that make it into copy, right? Horrendous. Anyway, a delivery plan will be met. Saying how this plan will be met will be published as soon as possible, as is reasonably practical after Parliament has approved the budget.
I can't wait for it to be published in like 2041 and a half. And
yeah,
then they'll just...
exactly right.
Oh, whoops!
Yeah.
Sorry, it got delayed a bit. Sorry about that, lads.
So, legislating the carbon budget level for 2042 sends an economy-wide signal to investors and businesses, providing long-term certainty, which will encourage investment and growth. We're not going to do anything about it, though, says government. Yeah, crikey. Okay. Talking of which, here is an interesting little graphic here, done by, put out by the European correspondent. Data from Eurostat, excluding a certain country, you'll notice. So let's just add that back in, shall we? So there we go. That's the color we should be. Me post annotating the graphic to be the appropriate color. Rail is the continent's most electrified mode. With nearly 60% of the EU network running on electricity, Switzerland has gone all in, while other countries are experimenting with battery trains, hybrids, and hydrogen to cover harder to electrify routes. Buses are catching up fast with zero-emission models now dominating new city fleets. Even ferries are beginning to plug in. Put a pin in this, though. Just put a little pin in this. Just remind ourselves about the rail being the EU's most electrified mode. Let's just put a pin in that. Meanwhile, we're back on the railways, and of course, efficiency without purpose is just austerity. So here's Noel pointing out that, essentially TransPennine Express was saying, well, our fuel costs have gone up, which we had not factored in, and we're going to have to impact on our service quality if we have to pay for that within our existing budget. Government, the whole point of view is that you cover... Oh, and by the way, we're government because TP is DFTO. Government, your whole point of view is that you cover the external shocks, not us. Right? Insert Padme and Anakin meme. No. The government refused to bail out the train company and said, no, you can just swallow that extra £50 million within your budget. So if you're wondering why your train is more dirty, why there isn't a catering service, or why there don't appear to be any staff anywhere, that's why. So that's good. So Noel pointing out that it still feels like GBR is about net subsidy reduction rather than revenue growth, despite all the grandstanding to the opposite. As I always point out, efficiency without purpose is just austerity. Relevant to this is that train operators' annual diesel spend nears $475 million amid electrification call. This is a really interesting bit of work that has been done by the relaunched campaign to electrify Britain's railways. Right now, it's been relaunched right now. There's some graphics that I haven't had time to put in here, actually, folks, but I'll maybe put them in the bonus for you all to look through, right? The relaunched campaign says its analysis of diesel prices... Oh, I should say, the price of diesel used by train operating companies has increased by 40% year on year, a study has found. Basically, it shows the annual diesel bill for passenger services will be more than $475 million in 2026-7, up $132 million on the year before. It said that work to electrify through to Sheffield, had it been completed by late 2020, as was proposed by the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition government, then $66 million would have been saved on traction energy costs alone.
It's the whole cutting the green crap thing again, they found that actually if we hadn't cut the green crap, we would have saved however much it was.
Quite a substantial amount of money.
It's that all over again. It's just like, well, this will save money. No, it won't. No, it won't. No, it won't.
This is bad, folks. Leo Murray, who's a friend of the show, past guest and co-author of the report, said, our figures show just how much our diesel dependence has cost us in money that leaves the country for petro states rather than money that could be invested in better railways or cheaper tickets for passengers. The railway is a glaring blind spot in the government's efforts to get Britain off the roller coaster of fossil fuel markets and onto clean homegrown power. The study also says the consumption of electricity by rail freight is half of what it was 15 years ago, a statistic the campaign group described as one of the most damning illustrations of Britain's problems with rail electrification. That's right, we are consuming half the electricity now than we were 15 years ago for rail freight.
Wasn't there that story a while ago? And I'm not actually sure what the latest on this is. That story about like some freight operator switching from electric trains to diesel trains because it was cheaper, because the electricity rates were so. I mean, what are we playing at?
Yeah, what are we doing here, folks? It's bad. On the subject, of course, of contracting the railway, here's a story from a little while ago. Railway could face reduced services and subsidies, Transport Secretary warns. That's really nice. Kind of a sort of a 1960s era cutting to attempt to fill a hole. It's like you can't dig your way out of a hole, folks. It doesn't work like that. And, oh, look, yes, Avanti West Coast are literally cutting 12% of services over the summer to save money.
I think Thameslink are cutting a few services as well. It's just...
The empty services are the one, keep the full services full. If you reduce the overall appeal of the timetable, fewer people would take the train. It is as simple as that, and it's a lesson we've learned for the last 40 years that we seem to have all of a sudden unlearned. All of this stuff is just going to fuel the argument that it is not, that nationalisation is bad, rather than the fact that this government are just using nationalisation as a branding exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What I don't get about this is that the government has said so many times that, like, with nationalisation, what we're going to do is we're going to let the railways sort of run themselves. You know, it'll be an arm's length body and it won't be micromanaged by ministers. And then they go and do this.
It's staggering.
What happened to we're going to let the people who know what they're doing do what they know how to do, and we won't have, Treasury / DFT ministers / civil servants demanding things like this.
This
is the whole thing GBR was meant to prevent. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, the Netherlands has introduced a €49 monthly ticket, the Deutschland ticket style thing again, for unlimited nationwide train travel, as a response to soaring energy costs. So, there's a choice. Soaring energy costs, you can double down on car dependency, or you can provide better alternatives. We, of course, have decided to just screw everyone over, and there's a double win here. More people travel by train, you're solving the energy crisis and also a cost of living crisis, and also you're increasing the revenue that the railways are earning outright. So why can't we do that sort of thing, for God's sake? No, not possible. We can't do that. What we can do, though, is let Palantir come in and run bits of the railway network. We can let SpaceX be in charge of our Wi-Fi through Starlink. Really good that we're embedding groups like Palantir. Palantir, of course, absolutely, a key player in Israel as part of Israel's genocide against Palestine. And then SpaceX, Starlink. Well, SpaceX is Musk. And so Musk could, at the drop of a hat, given that he is currently advocating for Restore Britain, a fascist party to take over government, it seems strange to then give him a huge contract to run the Wi-Fi of our trains and whatever else we'll be carrying on that Wi-Fi, because it's not just passenger information. It will all, passenger, accessing, watching Disney Plus on the train. It's also the fact that we'll probably be putting non-safety critical train information on that Wi-Fi network as well. Feels like a bad idea.
Potentially like government secrets as well, because there's this whole thing about number 10 North, which will that happen or not, I don't know. But if it does, then, a lot of ministers and people
will
traveling
using
back and
Wi-Fi
forth between...
trains, yes.
Yeah, right? So
and already doing,
I'm sure we shouldn't worry about that at all.
I wouldn't worry. Look, it's not... There's been some good data. In the world of train data, there's been some good news recently. The Wi-Fi thing here is like, we do want better Wi-Fi. Actually, it'd be better if we just had better 5G across the whole country, frankly. But anyway, right, Wi-Fi and trains, fine. Southeastern have done some really interesting stuff here. If we're talking about good data stuff, John Till et al. They've become the first train operator in the UK to automatically communicate planned timetable changes to passengers at stations on a service-by-service basis, a thing that I thought they already did, frankly.
That is surprising.
Yeah. So not a huge amount of money, about £250,000 spent on updating the customer information system. It means that customers will now see exactly what's different about their journey, such as the trains earlier, later, cancelled, through tailored messages on screen and the announcements. Producing this level of detail previously required extensive manual work and was basically limited to where there was a change of 2 minutes or more. But the upgraded system means that the whole thing is totally automated. So you avoid the risk of updates being missed. You reduce the time taken from kind of days to seconds in terms of this information kind of filtering through. And so, timetable changes are automatically compared, assessed, with clear messages generated for each revised service explaining what has changed. So you also get station-by-station reports that can be produced very quickly, helping teams respond to questions from customers. So this is good, right? This is a good thing. There are a few little gems that are happening around the network. I want to be talking to Alex Hornby to talk about the Northern Railway's growth targets, which have been quite interesting to follow as well. So there is some stuff going on. There is some good stuff going on out there if we're out there able to actually pay attention and look. Something else snuck through thanks to a Freedom of Information request. While we're on the subject of our railways, let's just briefly talk about the way that GBR is going to brand itself in Scotland and Wales, because there's this little official sensitive little PDF that's been circulating, which is not very official looking, but this is basically the latest we know about how branding will work. So this is interesting, really, because it's going, oh, look, GBR will be a unified master brand with a single brand being used nationally. And then there's this horrible format that they're using of like using the RailNatter YouTube video naming format.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't need this. You probably don't need this. You've got the double arrow. But the idea that we're still using these letters in the identity is just dismal as hell to me. Anyway, so, fine. Network Rail's brand will be retired as it will adopt GBR's and potentially include its business unit names with this bit. So, okay, fine. That makes some sense. So you might have GBR Engineering Services. Yeah, fine. This note reflects informal discussions between the UK Government Department for Transport and counterparts in Scottish and Welsh governments. So the existing brands, so the ScotRail services and Caledonian Sleeper services and TFW Rail services are not in the scope of work. So the services and their branding are devolved and will remain so. So that's good, right? Good. Train services primarily serving England would be branded as GBR and labelled with their region name reflecting their business unit. Fine. Scotland business unit. So there are elements of... so basically, like the Network Rail stuff that's happening in Scotland right now would be branded not with the BR arrow and Scotland's Railway, but with the convoluted GBR logo with Scotland's Railway there. So just a horrible repetition, but that's what that will look like. Be used on road vehicles.
Wait, so I've just realised it says Scotland's Railway twice.
Yes, it will say Scotland's Railways twice. That's right, yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's really good. It's really well thought through. This will be primarily used on road vehicles, track maintenance depots. It will also be applied at Waverley and Glasgow Central, though. What are we doing here? And on PP worn by current Network Rail staff, depending on costs and so on and so on and so on. So that's Scotland. What about Wales, though? Well, they'll be the same. What I love is that the GBR, Cymru ar Gororau, Wales and Borders. So that's the whole thing that will be the identity there. This whole bit of text will be the GBR branded identity. Have you heard of just using the double arrow? Because it doesn't have language on it and therefore it is multilingual. No, they have not. So that huge mess here... Then by the way, these look like they've put a text box over like their actual mock-up, by the way. So there is a real mock-up behind here that they've kind of redacted, which is a bit of a shame. I wonder, after the break, or rather outside of the episode, I'll maybe go into the PDF and work out whether I could just delete that if it's an element they've drawn.
That would be so funny.
It would be funny.
That would be. Oh, I swear, wasn't that a thing they did with like the Epstein files as well? Like you could just like highlight the text oh my goodness.
Let's do that. Let's do that right now, shall we? So I can confirm. Sadly, it's just a bitmap image. They have correctly rasterized it down. So that gets rid of our fun, folks. I'm afraid to say. But anyway, so there we go. A bit of an update on branding for anyone who's been paying attention to these things. Now,
it's just so convoluted, isn't it?
It really is. Like, yeah, it's such an unnecessary
I have to
mess.
say, reading that, I was just thinking of that one block they added to Minecraft that had the really long. It was like waxed, lightly weathered cut copper stairs, and it's just it was like 27 characters or something. It's just like every other block is just like stone, and then you've got. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, this is convoluted is the right way to describe
yes,
this. It's just like you have the double arrow. It is right there. Right, talking of rail links, slightly abstract little thing that sits in amongst some of the other kind of NEF, New Economics Foundation research that's been going on, but a very interesting bit of work showing that the basically, there's kind of looking at the changing face of domestic tourism. So in 2025, when we had the complete data, the Southwest actually lost its crown as Britain's favourite domestic summer holiday region. So there isn't a huge amount of data, reliable data going hugely far back, but it looks likely this is the first time it's happened in decades. It also lost the lead on total tourist spending, but it does cling on to the most total nights spent. The Southwest is losing out in a wider shift, favouring trips abroad and city breaks, particularly to London and the Northwest, so to Manchester. Longer stays in more rural and seaside destinations are suffering from a harsh combination of domestic cost rises and cheap international competition. So you have a really nice thing here showing the Southwest here dropping down the rankings and being beaten by London, the Northwest, and the Southeast more broadly. Scotland dropping or kind of shifting a little bit because London has shot right up. City breaks to London have become popular. Now, if we think about people's ability to travel around, suddenly you start thinking, wait a minute, transport is pretty good in London. I wonder if that's a factor. It's not bad in the Northwest, it's not bad in the Southeast. I wonder if that's a factor in this. We can see that, the northeast of England continues to be not hugely popular. Big drop for Yorkshire and the Humber, again, with its not great links. So, interesting. Wales and Scotland kind of just droppings because London has been shifted up, but otherwise not much change. So, some interesting statistics about the movement of people around the country there. Considering that leisure travel is supposedly the saviour of the railways right now, this sort of data is the sort of thing that should be factoring into strategic planning across the country. And of course, we have to say the metro cars retire at long last. Up on the Tyne-Wear Metro, they've gone. They've all now officially. There are no scheduled uses of the metro cars planned. Again, they might find their way out here and there in disruption for possibly like another 6.
That's
9 months.
like what happened with the Class 455s. Like they had the big farewell tour, and then they were still running like weeks and months after they were supposedly withdrawn.
That's what to expect. The thing that's most sad, of course, about these disappearing is the fact that there is no longer a seat at the front that you can sit in. Look at them though; they're gorgeous. These funny little buggly things. These are. There's a fantastic poem by a local poet written about these things that I wish I could give you in full, but I just strongly recommend that. Basically, like it's these things are evocative of what the Tyne-Wear Metro gave us, which is Britain. It was a light metro system. It was really quite impressive what it's given us. Very iconically branded, and of course delivered as part of an integrated transport system that has been obliterated by bus deregulation that is hopefully going to be reassembled again so that we can get back to a place where these work as part of the wider whole, including lines like the Ashton Blythe line, the Northumberland line needs to be reinstated as well. It's exciting, it's sad, it's happy. The 555s are a good train, but there's something melancholic about sort of bidding farewell to these.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's nice to sort of spend a moment, think about their 46 years of service, their 1.7 billion customer journeys, and their 500 million kilometres as a fleet. But yeah, Friday 26th of June, that was the end for the 599s. Farewell. Talking of farewells, you might think, well, this is RailNat, so what's Trawsfynydd got to do with anything? Well, this is the UK's only inland nuclear power station. This thing, it's moved from the we need to get rid of the really spicy rock stage to the we can start chopping the roof of these things off stage. They're going to lower the height of these buildings, which I have to say I have mixed feelings about. We'll get to that in a second. Like the program so far has been focused on removing the highest kind of level waste that remains on site, categorized as intermediate level waste, which is a bit of a euphemism for saying that this is still pretty bad. It's a kind of a mid-range category of radioactive waste. So it's kind of like one level down from Chernobyl, which is more active than everyday low-level waste, but not as hazardous as like the high-level dangerous stuff. But like Trawsfynydd is an iconic Basil Spence design. Basil Spence, for anyone who doesn't know, Basil Spence was one of the absolutely iconic brutalist sort of social infrastructure, social architecture pioneers in the middle of the 20th century. And the landscaping here was designed by the equally iconic Sylvia Crowe, who did a lot of urban landscaping and industrial landscaping in the middle of the 20th century. So I'm sort of sad that we've not found better uses for the site at this point, to be honest. There is also, and one of the reasons why I include this is that there is absolutely a conversation to be had about how to utilise not just this site and its link to the mainline railway network, but also the branch line that runs down through Festiniog. So it comes out of Blenheim through Festiniog and into Trasvenith. And I don't think the purpose, given that the tourist value of the area and the reservoir that has been collecting water to cool this thing, as well as being a hydro plant, I don't think a heritage service is the right thing to do. Currently, there was a team who did some DVEG in 26 about a decade ago, and then they haven't really had access since. I think there are some interesting questions to be had about what you do with what is still an extant railway corridor, even if you have to relay all the track. But anyway, the plan will be that these lose about half their height, these two reactor buildings. They lose half their height, and I'm in two minds as to what... I think there are things that you could do at this facility that could be quite interesting around tourism, if not around sort of sustainable development and sort of sustainable industry. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think we're thinking very strategically about what could be happening here.
Not thinking strategically, surely not. That
I know.
We're experts at that in this country. What do you mean?
We jump to Canada because Ontario's transit agency is writing off more than $500 million it spent on upgrading signalling around the main station in downtown Toronto. This is Metrolinx writing off 504 million Canadian dollars, which is quite spectacular. We're having challenges with our kind of rollout of modernized signaling, but this makes even spending $100 million upgrading a Class 66 look stupid. £100 million. Yeah, this is baffling. Why don't design abortive work like this? You can't. Designing £500 million worth of abortive work is quite something. There's a kind of a whole history to this, right? So in January 2024, Metrolinx announced it accepted a proposal from On Express, made up of kind of like Deutsche Bahn and Aecon concessions, to plan and run its rail system. The plan was that this would start in January 2025. The agreement with them was unveiled in 2022 would modernise and transform the rail network. Months after they were supposed to have taken over the operations, they ran off. They parted ways with Metrolinx, leaving a contract that was supposed to run for 23 years abandoned. The result has been, I guess we have to in-house this and no one else wants to pick it up. Yikes. So that means that Metrolinx has now realised they're getting a major shift and they're going to move away from relying on consultants and towards having full-time in-house staff. Good idea is all I'll say to that, because $500 million. Oh boy, that's painful.
This reminds me of a video I was watching earlier in the week about a similar sort of cock-up that's happened with Stuttgart 21, where they forgot to tell the basically the train operators that they were installing ETCS in the area. So they forgot to, give sufficient notice to the train operators to upgrade all their rolling stock to ETCS. Yep. So now they've started installing the legacy signaling system alongside the ETCS. But then because they were in such a rush to do that, they installed the wrong cables for the signals. So they've installed, I forget how many kilometers, but like a lot, like a long length of cables along the entire route of Stuttgart 21, because it's not just the station, it's like all the lines leading in and out.
All the approaches, yeah.
And all of the cables that they've laid now have to be ripped out because they were in such a rush to get this legacy signaling system put in, as well as ETCS, that they just started laying the cables without actually checking that they were the right type.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Oh my goodness.
We moved to Germany, actually, because GSMR fall down again. This happened in the southeast of England, right, fairly recently. It's happened in Germany at a massive scale. A major problem with GSMR resulted in trains being held at stations and huge lines of information desks as everyone tried to work out what the hell was going on. Famously, having travelled in Germany a lot, I've never travelled by train in Germany without there being a problem. It's Germany's rail network is not nearly as good as everyone says, and that's only beaten by how bad their customer information is. So Deutsche Bahn said shortly after, before 1 a.m., so 2.5 hours after it first reported the outage, that the problem had been resolved and the service was resuming step by step. But basically, they refused to give actual clarity. They still haven't given clarity on exactly what happened. But yeah, GSMR falling down is not good. Could it have been a cyber attack? Quite possibly. Those sorts of things are happening more often. But also it could have just been someone sitting on the off button on a server rack somewhere. Those sorts of things also happened. So yeah, yes, I picked this video still because this is one of the coolest looking couples I've ever seen.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, that picture is so incredibly. That is vibes right there. Yeah, absolutely.
It goes really hard. These two, I wish them a long and powerful life. So what else? I mean, unfortunately, we remain in Germany for something rather more subdued, which is in a jarring shift of tone. About the same time as we had our fatal crash recently, in Bedford, there was a crash in Munich. Two freight trains colliding with each other on a bridge, resulting in a fatality. It's not clear where the fatality has occurred. My fear is that it might be someone at road level. But it is not clear or it could be a driver. It's not clear. But the crash, this isn't good. We don't like throwing trains off bridges in the path of the public.
Yeah, no, that's really quite spectacularly bad.
Yeah, it's not clear what's. I look forward to people in the comments. If there's further details that's come out on this, feel free to drop in the comments what's known about this one. Yeah, really not good at all. Yeah. We jump across the Atlantic, though. You might say transatlantic or transatlantic, and that's another thing. To talk about the fact that the NYC Gateway project, the move to halt the funding for the project was flagrantly illegal, a judge has said. A federal judge found on Monday that the Trump administration's decision to halt funding for the Gateway Tunnel project ran afoul of the law and permanently barred it from freezing the grants again. Does that mean that Trump has been defeated on this one? Maybe. Is he desperately trying to divert funds from this into building a sort of a golden palace above Penn Station? Also maybe. Again, listen to Transatlantic on that one. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to know more about Gateway Project, we're going to do an episode on the Gateway Project at some point soon. But also go back to the There's Your Problem podcast episode where we did Penn Station and we talk a lot about the Gateway Project and question it, basically. Let's talk about more stupid things as we get to the very end, because does everyone remember this? The Flexi, the railroad shuttle project that was going to solve rural transport. Yeah, it's been abandoned. It's been canned off. Yeah, it's not. They're not going to be running as planned. Since 2023, this shuttle had been under development by the SNCF consortium a consortium including SNCF, Mila, is a kind of a driverless vehicle manufacturer. Those things don't exist, remember. The Ile-de-France-based technological research institute Railenium, interesting, and Michelin. Michelin always keen to be involved in anything that puts tires on vehicles that should just have steel on steel. If there's a possibility of putting tires on a railway vehicle, they will be investing in it. But the withdrawal of Mila from this, or Mila, I pronounce it how you will, it could be Mia. Anyway, the autonomous vehicle manufacturer withdrew for technical reasons. They're collapsing in on themselves, I suspect, as with any of these boondoggle companies. Yeah. Brought the project to a halt as a new manufacturer could not be found. The decision has significant consequences as the project, valued at 36 million euros, had received 10 million in state subsidies through the French Agency for Ecological Transition. Well, as we know, there is nothing the EU does not love throwing millions of euros at scale. They just love to do it. They absolutely love to do it. On which subject? We bid farewell, a moment's pause for the Flexi.
RIP. It's like, what if we took the worst of trains and the worst of cars and combined them to something that has the advantages of neither and the disadvantages of both?
Yeah,
absolutely top stuff.
Let's do that.
RIP them.
RIP to a real one. Talking of the EU, the European Commission once again hates trains. We're once again in a we hate trains situation because the European Commission and member states took an important step to reducing dependence on fossil fuels in the road transport. Remember everyone where I said put a pin in the fact that rail is the most electrified form of transport on the continent? Well, just unpin that now and hold in your hand that idea. So 9 member states endorsed the first 2 roadmaps developed under the Clean Transport Corridor Initiative, together with the Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism, Apostolos Tsikitsostas. That's not right. I will say that again. EU ministers from 9 member states endorsed the first 2 roadmaps developed under the Clean Transport Corridor Initiative. It's kind of aimed at accelerating the deployment of charging infrastructure for zero-emission trucks. Zero-emission trucks. There's an alternative to those. What might it be called? Along 2 major 10T corridors. So those are the big strategic transport corridors in Europe. The Scandinavian-Mediterranean corridor and the North Sea-Baltic corridor. This initiative marks an important milestone under the European Automotive Industrial Action Plan, reflecting a shared ambition to accelerate the deployment of zero-emission freight transport across Europe. Zero-emission freight transport. Now, what form of that exists?
If only someone had invented that. Like, I don't know, like 100 years ago.
140 at the current going rate.
Well, quite, yeah.
Okay, so, right.
Is this going to be like that thing that we looked at ages ago of like, let's put wires above the motorway? And or is it just like, let's install some chargers?
Well,
like, what are we dealing with here?
I can tell you. So those roadmaps identify priority actions, which are like infrastructure gaps and investment needs, including the energy sector, so gaps in power supply, in sort of distribution network, the things like deployment of charging infrastructure, coordination across borders, shared standards. Increasing certainty for investors and operators. This is pure European Commission. Well, this is pure European Commission neolib brain. You have to remember that the European Commission, of all the bodies within the EU, the European Commission is the most weird neolib hawkish German part of the organization. The part of the organization most ripe for someone running around with a sack and kidnapping members and taking them and showing them how good trains are. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, once again, so the European Commission refusing to acknowledge the existence of trains. And that feels like a nice place to end, because don't worry, Britain is stupid, but Europe at large is also extremely stupid as well. Hey, Michael, look, it's been a delight to have you both out in Cambridge, the south of Cambridge, and joining us back in the studio as well for running through some news at high speed.
Yes.
The last thing I want to say is, Michael C., where can people find you? What should they be listening to or watching on YouTube? How do they find Network News, for example?
Well, you find Network News by searching Network News, or it'll probably also be linked in the description. So if you want me covering railway/transportation news, that is the place to go. Or if you just want to see me sort of larking around, then also, wait, hold on, I can finger put that there. Michael C.
Search that.
That's Michael C. If you want to see me larking around at Cambridge South, for example, you saw sort of a bit of that earlier, but that is the place to go for that.
Perfect. Michael C., thank you so much. It only remains for both of us to bid you farewell. Of course, I will see you at 9:30 for the bonus live that time. This is a pre-record because I'm currently holding a screaming baby with wind. So, everyone, it is only for Michael and I to bid you farewell. Cheerio!
Cheerio!
And of course, we have to give a little tip of the hat to the Class 310, the British Rail Class 310. It's a lovely kind of modernisation era, West Coast electrification, AC EMU here with slam doors and these very fetching curved windows at the front. I think it looks great. It was originally all over rail blue, and then it was kind of amended to the kind of the standard blue and grey a little later. This thing was a 75 mile an hour unit, so not hugely fast. But it was kind of a suburban unit, right? It was being used for suburban trains. It had a load of firsts. It's kind of new features. Also, you could look out the front. There was a glass partition, so you could actually sit and look out the front next to the driver. They were the first standard multiple units with disc brakes. The first naturally air-cooled rectifiers, silicon diodes on cups of beryllium oxide. People know what that means. Inductors and transformers. Noise reduced by sprayed asbestos on the floor, body and roof. Hooray! And they're, of course, also the first EMUs to be based on the Mark II coach shell, body shell, which kind of featured sort of semi-integral construction, therefore was that bit safer as a vehicle. Similar, but of a different sort of general footprint was the Mark 1 based 311. So these were also AC multiple units. They were designed for Glasgow suburban electrification. We used to do things in this country, mainline electrification, London suburban electrification and West Midlands suburban electrification, and Glasgow suburban electrification, and having trains then put out. So this one was in here it is, it's very fetching kind of orange, bright orange livery. So these were basically just the class 303s again. So built, these were manufactured in the late 60s or the mid to late 60s, but they were using the 1960 design, so a little bit out of date, but basically taking something that worked, slightly updating it, except that they were originally built by the Press Steel Company that no longer made trains. So a different company, Cravens of Sheffield, worked from the same original drawings but tweaked them here and there for the new trains. So things like there are some slight tweaks to the interior, different lighting, for example, and a few little tweaks, but generally they're pretty much the same. And yeah, both these and the 303s ended up having, this is a picture with its flat glass, I believe, ended up having its lovely wraparound glass, a bit like the previous one actually. You see the wraparound glass there, ended up having that replaced with flat glass because it provided better protection to drivers in the event of attacks by yobbos chucking stones. Just don't look at how horrifying the double arrow, that anemic double arrow is on the side of the train there. That's really not that good.